Hello and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. I have my Jesus King of Kings t-shirt on, my King of Kings movie right next to me, and judging by the frame around me, we are back taking down another atheist. Back on the chopping block is Burke and her video, 5 Bible passages that caused me to lose my faith. Burke is kind of I would say probably a leading person in the deconstructionist movement right now. There's a lot of people that are talking either about the deconstructionist movement or are actively talking about it in the Christian sense. In fact, Ray Comfort from Living Waters did a video on this very video just a few months ago, where he kind of talked very similarly about the Bible passages that she talks about. He didn't go this in-depth into it the way that I'm doing it, which is, I'm kind of breaking down each passage and talking about each part, kind of letting her talk and then speak. He just kind of went specifically right after the Bible passages that she talks about, and then he kind of gives why a Christian should not, disbelieve or deconstruct just because they hear something or they hear someone say something about these passages. When last we left off, we were talking about the passage in Deuteronomy, which was basically where the or I believe it was Deuteronomy. It was Deuteronomy. Where it was, if a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed, seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, and the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all his days. So basically, what that passage was, we talked about last time, that was more of a punishment for the man, because instead of just sending that man to jail and then having a woman just kind of rotting away in her father's house because she couldn't be married because she was considered impure at that time, because they took virginity that seriously back then, they decided to punish the man by saying, you can't divorce her, you have to take care of her all the rest of your days, you can't do anything else. This was more of a punishment for the man than it was for a woman. Okay? So if that's the truth, and that's kind of what her pastor told her as well, okay, and so my thing to her was, okay, so if you're hearing this from me and from your former pastor who was saying the same thing, then that's not indoctrination. That's actually what the truth is of the historical context of that Bible passage. Now, do we still do that today? No. Should we do that today? I think so. In fact, some denominations like Mormonism and in certain types of Catholicism, they actually do this. Like if you are, someone who say, goes and knocks up a girl, like this actually happened when I was in high school. There was a gal who was part of the Mormon faith, and she had gotten pregnant. She was like 15 or 16 when it happened. The guy got sent up for statutory rape because he was 18 or 19. And as soon as he got done serving out his jail sentence, the Mormon church was going to force him to get married to her, because it was like, hey, you got her pregnant, you did this, so when you're done serving your jail sentence for knocking up an underage woman, you're going to get married to her and you're going to take care of her for the rest of your life. Now, I don't know whatever happened to those people. I lost track of that gal a long time ago, and I've never ever, sought her out or anything like that. So there are some faiths that try to do that. There are some people that try to kind of push in that direction because they realize that, it's more of a punishment on the man than it is a punishment on the woman. Because, this is this is something that is very, very bad. Because as we read the whole entire passage on the laws concerning sexual immorality, we noticed that at certain times when it said that certain things happened, whether the woman was betrothed or not, or if it was a rape or not, it was considerably different for the man, than for the woman. Okay? And this is kind of also where, if you go to the passage in John 7:59 through 8:11, which is the woman caught in adultery, you start to see that the woman caught in adultery, in the law, both the man and the woman had to be brought to the city gate and stoned to death. In that instance, they only brought the woman to Jesus, and was like, haha, we've caught this woman in adultery, ha ha ha, as if the man wasn't party to that too. You see what I'm saying? So, and it's likely that, and I've heard this from various different people, is that it's likely that the man who was also caught in adultery was likely part of the crowd. And that might have been some of the things that Jesus was writing in the dirt. Okay? Is that he was writing out individual sins. Okay? Now, some people say, oh, these aren't the earliest manuscripts, so it doesn't count. Others, it's in the Latin Vulgate, it's in the Septuagint. There's a few other things that we see in various manuscripts. There's like spaces in those manuscripts where there could be something that was copied that was intentionally left out at the time. There's different ways of interpreting that. So what most, because it's in the Latin Vulgate, and like I said, some of the manuscripts have a space where it should be, then a lot of people just put it in with a caveat that says earlier manuscripts don't have this, later manuscripts do. Okay? And some will put it in different places in the Gospels. They'll just, they'll stick the story in different places in the Gospels. But anyway, getting back to what we're saying here, this is a specific instance that is happening that is designed to punish the man. Okay? It's designed to punish the man for seizing a virgin woman. Okay? And not committing adultery, just seizing a virgin woman. Okay? She's not a prostitute. She's not, anything like that. She's not whoring herself out. She's not, doing anything like that. She's just a virgin. And a guy comes in and has sex with her and is caught, and they're like, okay, now you have to pay the woman, you have to pay the woman's father, and you have to take care of the woman for the rest of your life. So not only does he have to pay the dowry, which is what you would normally do back then, okay, and that custom carried from, before the time of Christ all the way through up to the Middle Ages, where if you wanted to do things, you had to pay a dowry to the woman's father, okay, because that was kind of paying them back for raising a virgin daughter. And that's because virginity was highly prized back then, okay? Because if a woman didn't have her virginity, it was considered to be like she was a prostitute, basically, is what she was considered to be, okay, if she didn't have her virginity. So purity, and that's the reason why wedding dresses are typically white, because what does white symbolize? Purity. That's why, okay? So, in that, let's jump back into the video here and let's continue on forward.
That makes sense. But not me. I couldn't. I could not make sense of that. It'd be one thing if these were just rules that men made up that God did not approve of, but this is a direct law of God in the Bible. This kind of loophole for men to find a wife.
No, that's not what this is. Oh, Christy. No, this is not because the thing is, Did you read the last line here? He may not divorce her all his days. Like, did you read? Did you miss that part? Did you miss that part? Because here's the thing. If I am a person who is, quote, looking for a wife, okay, I'm not gonna go and grape someone, okay, to get a fucking wife. That makes no sense at all. Why would I do that to myself? That makes no sense, because you have to understand 50 shekels is a hell of a lot of money back then, okay? Like, that would have been probably, like 5 or 10 years worth of wages for most people back then, okay? That was not just a small amount of money. That was not pocket change where it was like, oh, see, I had this woman over here, so I just paid her father 50 cents and I could have her as my wife. No, that's not what this is, Christy. Okay? And if you're listening to this, if you're paying attention, she's trying to bring in her own worldview, her own worldly interests and things to try to say, well, this was just an easy way for a man just to go over and just, like, rape a woman, and then all of a sudden he's got access to her for the rest of his life. No, that's not what this is about. Because, again, that 50 shekels was a hell of a lot of money back then. Okay? That was not a small amount of money. Okay? Because you have to realize a shekel is like a talent. Okay? Or like half of a talent, if you know what a talent is. Okay? A Greek talent was like a ton of money. Okay? So shekels were like talents. Shekels were a hell of a lot of money. It was not something that it was like, oh, guess what? I've just got this money just kind of sitting around. I'm just going to throw it at somebody and just, make it rain. No, if you were somebody who was just a common laborer, this was a deterrent for not doing this. Because you may not have the 50 shekels to give to the man's father. Okay? Which means that you became his bondservant to work off the 50 shekel debt until the year of Jubilee. And you were shackled to his daughter for the rest of your life. Because again, you couldn't get divorced. They wrote your name down in a book, and if you tried to go to the temple later and say, I'm going to write out a certificate of divorce because I can't stand this woman, they would go, nope. You don't get to do that. And keep in mind, thou shalt not kill. You couldn't kill your wife to get out of it. Okay? So, this was a punishment on the man. This was a deterrent from a man just wanting to seize someone's daughter and have sex with her in some manner. Okay? Because if he did, he was married to that woman for the rest of his life. And again, men typically did not outlive women. Okay? Back in those days. They ended up dying very young. Okay? And it's still pretty typical today that women outlive men. Now, there are typically, it's not that typical anymore, but it is most of the time women outlive men. Okay? There are more elderly women than there are elderly men out there. Okay? It's gotten more equal, but it's still, the proportion is still in favor of women. Okay? So, again, this is not just a vehicle for men to get women, to get a wife. No! What the hell are you even talking about? That is the dumbest. The amount of mental gymnastics needed to get to that level of cognitive dissonance on this one passage is so outrageous, it just defies expectations. I'm sorry, it just really does. That is so dumb.
If they just assaulted her, and then they could marry her. If they just, paid her father some money. And supposedly that was a lot of money back then, so that was a very big punishment. But really? That's how we punish them.
No, we're punishing the man. Okay? By A, yes, you have to pay a hell of a lot of money. And B, you can never get divorced. Again, should we read this passage? If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all his days. Again, this is a passage where they're basically saying, look, you raped this woman, okay? And so you pay her father this amount of money, and now you have to stay married to her for the rest of your life. You can never get divorced. That's the punishment, Christy. It's not a reward. That's not a reward for that man. Okay? Because if he wanted to have another woman at some point, okay, if he wanted someone else in the village, let's say he wanted to be betrothed to somebody else, but, like, he decided to do this to another woman, then he could never, ever, ever have another woman in the village. Or any other village, for that matter. Because polygamy wasn't a thing if you weren't rich. And most of the time, in a lot of those relationships, like David, Solomon, all that kind of stuff, most of those marriages were political marriages. Most of those marriages were, like Saul saying to David, hey, here's, if someone kills me or brings me 100 Philistine foreskins, I'll give you my daughter to marry. And so what did David do? He went out and killed 100 Philistines and brought the foreskins. And, like, Saul went and married off his daughter to someone else for a while. And David's like, wait a minute, where's my wife? Like, hello? Most of the marriages that those people had, the kings and stuff like that, most of those marriages were political marriages, okay? Which is why they were, quote, polygamous. They didn't want to have that many wives, but it just behooved them to make peace with surrounding nations so they would get married to certain people, okay? But for most people, okay, for like the 99% of people in the nation of Israel that were not the king, okay, how did they get married? They got married to one person, and typically what they would do is their family would set aside some dowry money, okay, because there was like an agreed upon price that people would ask for a dowry, and then what would end up happening is that when the person was of age, they would go to that person's father and they would say, I want to be betrothed to your daughter. Okay? And then they would have a betrothal / courtship stage. Okay? And what would happen during that stage, in Jewish custom, was that the man would then go back, the bridegroom would then go back to his house, his father's house, and he would build a honeymoon suite, basically, on the side of the house. Okay? Now, whether or not that man lived there with his new wife or, did something else was a matter of debate. Like, because some people might get a job in another town. Some people might try to go live in another town because maybe they don't want to be in their father's house anymore. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point being that after a set amount of time, okay, and that time was determined by the groom's father, okay, that he determined that honeymoon suite was satisfactory. So the guy couldn't just slap up a lean-to and then run and go grab his bride. He had to make the room look beautiful, okay? He had to make the room look good, okay? Then he would go back to get his bride, okay? And then typically what would happen is that he would get this woman and then bring her back to the house, and then they would consummate their relationship, and then the party started, and the party lasted for 7 days. Okay? Starting to sound a little familiar? What did Jesus compare himself to? That's right, the bridegroom. And who's his bride? The church. He's coming back for us one day. We don't know when, because only the Father in heaven knows. Anyway, that being said, This is not something that someone's going to do to get a wife. Okay? That is not something that someone wants to do. This is not how you just get a wife. Okay? Get that out of your head. That's not what this is. This is a punishment, because in normal marriages, yes, if things went wrong, if the woman did something wrong, if there was something going on, the husband could easily divorce his wife because he could give it a certificate of divorce and put her away. Okay? It was a very shameful thing to do back then, too, because divorce was a very, very, public ideology. Okay? And because women weren't able to hold any kind of anything, really, it kind of made it so that people were not able to do a whole lot of things. And so it ends up being this problem for the woman if she ever got divorced. And that's the issue, is that in this command, it is not like, oh, I just get to go get myself a wife, and when I want out, I just get to go to... No, this was a lifelong commitment for the man. He had to take care of that woman that he violated for the rest of his life. Not her life, his life. Because again, most men died before the women in that culture. Okay? That is something that you would not want as a man. Because this isn't something that's like, oh, I just want to go get me a wife, so I'm going to go rape this one woman. Haha. No, that's not what you did. Again, the level of mental gymnastics needed to get to this level of cognitive dissonance is staggering. Absolutely staggering. It is so beyond the pale. Okay? Because this is idiocracy at its finest. Okay? You cannot justify anything like that. Because what she's doing is she's basically trying to take, the Me Too movement and, shit like that, and trying to make it seem like, oh, it's okay, everybody did it. No. In fact, we don't see a single instance of that happening. I think about the only instance that I can think of was, Absalom, I just read this story too. Let me see here. 2 Samuel. So basically, yeah. So basically, in David's household, okay, he had a bunch of wives. And with one of his wives, he had a woman, Tamar, and a son, Absalom. They were brother and sister, okay? And with another son that David had through a different wife was named Amnon, okay? And Amnon loved Tamar, okay? She was very beautiful, okay? And basically, he gets to the point where he just has to have her. So he and another guy concoct a scheme. It's Jonadab, who's a friend of Amnon's. He and Amnon create this kind of a thing where they basically concoct a plan to have Amnon and Tamar become alone, so that he can seize her and rape her. Okay? Now, he does, and then it says, But he would not listen to her. What she says to him is, she says in 2 Samuel 13, verse 11, but when she brought them near him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, come lie with me, sister. She answered him, no, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not to be done in Israel. Do not do this outrageous thing. As for me, where could I carry my shame? And as for you, you would be as one of the outrageous fools in Israel. Now therefore please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. But he would not listen to her, and being stronger than she, he violated her and laid with her. Then Amnon hated her with a very great hatred, so that hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love for which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, then get up and go. But she said to him, no, my brother, for this is wrong, sending me away. It is greater than the other that you did to me. But he would not listen to her. He called the young man who served him, Jonadab, and said, put this woman out of my presence, and pulled the door after her. So basically, and she was wearing a robe that was reserved for virgin women. Now, what is the command there? The command is, under Deuteronomy 22, 26 through, or 28 through 29, he would have had to have married her. And he would have had to have paid to his father, the king, 50 shekels of silver, which, I mean, being like a prince of Israel, basically he could probably afford that. But the point being that this is something that should have happened, but it didn't, because nobody informed the king. Nobody informed the priests. Nobody informed anything. So Absalom took matters into his own hands and has Amnon murdered. Okay? And then basically from there, Absalom then, goes and does a whole bunch of things and then ends up dying. Okay? And so that's the only place, I think, in the Old Testament where somebody violated a virgin and was not held accountable for it until a little later when they were actually murdered by the brother of the person. And that was something that here again in the nation of Israel, they had these like refugee cities where if you had somebody with a blood debt on you, then you basically would flee to this city until like a certain period of time elapsed or something happened. I don't remember the exact things about it. But basically, and that's basically what Absalom did, is he left and then he was brought back, but the king was very displeased with his son for murdering his half-brother, basically. For not forcing him into the punishment that was prescribed by the law. And because of that, Absalom felt that his dad was slighting him, and so he decided to conspire to become sort of a judge of Israel. Basically take over the kingship from his father. And so he does. And then he ends up getting killed later on. Okay? And David ends up grieving for his sons because he never wanted that to happen. That's the point. Okay? Is that there is a punishment prescribed in the law for just such an occasion. And what should have happened is Absalom should have gone to his father, showed him what happened to Tamar, and said, now you need to hold him accountable for this, because now he hates her, but you are the king, you can force him to do this. And that would have been more punishment for Amnon than just murdering him outright, because Tamar still has to live with the shame of not being a virgin and not being able to get married to anyone. Do you see now what the punishment is? The punishment was for the man, not for the woman. The punishment was for the man. And it was not for the man to get a wife, because obviously Tamar told Amnon, don't do this, go to my father, go to our father, the king, and say, I'm in love with Tamar, I want to marry her, and he won't deny you. And he was like, hell no, and he raped her, and then he hated her. and sent her away. And instead of doing the right thing, Absalom did the wrong thing. Okay? Instead of upholding the law of God, he committed another sin by killing his own half-brother. Do you understand that? Do you get it now? This is the punishment for the man, because this is something that now Amnon would never have been able to get married to anyone else. He would have been stuck with Tamar for the rest of his natural life. And it's likely that Absalom wouldn't have needed to do what he did because the law would have been satisfied. Do you understand now? But we're imperfect human beings. We never act in accordance with what God wants. And the result.
Man, I don't know any woman that would ever want to spend her life being married to and having to submit to the man that assaulted her. And I've had people ask me, well, what do you recommend? What's the solution? I mean, she would have been an outcast. She would have been unclean. She wouldn't have been eligible for marriage. And so what are they supposed to do?
So she's trying to ascribe 20th, 21st century values to a civilization that was pre-Christ, okay? That placed a higher value on virginity, that placed a higher value on purity of men and women, okay? So this is something that, and need we forget that earlier in 2 Samuel, right, when David sees Bathsheba on the roof of the bathing on the roof of her house, right, in Jerusalem, he says, "Who is that?" And they're like, "Oh, that's the wife of Uriah the Hittite." And he's like, "Well, bring him back here." Because David had committed adultery with Bathsheba and she got pregnant. So what he was trying to do is he brought Uriah home with the hopes that he could send Uriah to lie with his wife, and then he could basically tell Bathsheba, okay, you just tell your husband that baby's his. Right? Little white lie, covers everything up, bam, we're good, right? But what did Uriah do? He said, as long as I have all of these people camping, out fighting wars, they're not able to lie with their wives. Why would I defile myself? Why would I pride myself on being able to go home and lie with my wife when they don't get the chance to do that? Because they're at war. And as a commander, I have no reason to do that. And David's like panicking. He's like, holy crap, this guy's not doing what I want him to do. So what does he do? He sends him home. And it basically sends him back, not home, but he sends him back to the fighting, and he says, go put him in the thick of it so he dies. And he does. And so after the period of mourning was over, David brought Bathsheba into his house. And then God punishes David by killing the child. Okay? So, again, there was a different standard, because you have to look at the historical context of why things are the way they are. She's not doing that. She is just trying to say, oh, well, I don't know any woman that would want to do that. And it's like, I don't think that the woman would wanted that either. But the point being that virginity was so highly prized that if a man was going to take it by force from a woman, then it was God's duty to make sure that that woman was taken care of for the rest of her life, because she would have been considered an outcast. Because unlike today, where, yes, women have been sexually assaulted before, they've had problems like that, And what do we generally do with those people? We throw them in prison. Do they continue to become grapists? Yes. Why? Because there's no solid punishment for it. Because they get to go serve a prison sentence and then they get to go out into the world and continue doing it. In fact, in Washington State, where I lived, there used to, I don't think it's there anymore, but there used to be an island up in the San Juan Islands. It was an uninhabited island that the state took over, and they basically made it a place for like repeat sex offenders. Okay, people that just couldn't stop graping. Okay, and a woman, female from one of the news stations in Seattle, went up and did a report on this island. Okay, and she asked a guy who was a repeat offender. She was like, why are you in here? And he's like, I graped, X many women. And she's like, okay, would you do that again if you were released today? And he goes, yes. And she goes, so if you were let go from this island today and you were sent you were sent back to, let's say, Seattle, the city of Seattle, would you stalk me out? Because she was an attractive female reporter. She goes, would you seek me out and assault me? Without hesitating, the man said yes. Okay? Because again, there was no real punishment to fit the crime. So they're allowed to do it. Why wouldn't they? That's the notion that she's ascribing to this passage. That, they're free to just run around and grape anybody they want to. No. Not according to this passage. According to this passage, if he did that, he was married to that one woman. Forever. He had to take care of her. Forever. He couldn't ever leave her side. Forever. That's the marriage covenant that was given. That was the punishment for the man's crime. Okay? Because the woman would not be allowed to get married in that culture were she impure. That is, if she was not a virgin. So she would have either had to, A, live under her father's roof for her entire life and never have anything, or B, be married to the person that forcefully took her virginity. And in that culture, I think she would have chosen the latter rather than the former. Because at least that man would have taken care of her for the rest of her life. And if she had a child or whatever, then that man would take care of the child and they would have done all that stuff. Is it imperfect? Yes. But we live in an imperfect world. Okay? And it's better than just allowing men to just go around and do whatever they please with almost no consequences. Which is what we're doing in this country already. There are many, many big cities where people are allowed to just run around and steal things and, live on the streets and defecate everywhere and do all this other crap. And nobody stops them. It's complete anarchy. That's what this is seeking to avoid, is complete anarchy. I don't understand why she doesn't get this. It's like, my God, are you stupid?
They were trying to protect her. I don't know, maybe God could have commanded the community to come together and take care of that woman. Maybe God could have commanded the men to marry women even if they aren't virgins. To not worry about if a woman was a virgin when he married her. That would solve...
No, it wouldn't solve anything. Because the point is in the previous passages. Okay? I mean, like verse 23, if there is a betrothed virgin and a man meets her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of the city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The young woman because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. Okay? And, the other part of it is that in the beginning of the passage, it talks about if a man takes a wife and goes into her and hates her and accuses her of misconduct and brings a bad name upon her, saying, I took this woman when I came near her and I did not find in her evidence of virginity. And then the father of the young woman and the mother will take and bring out the evidence of her virginity to the elders of the city in the gate. And the father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I give my daughter to this man to marry, and he hates her. And behold, he has accused her of misconduct, saying, I did not find in your daughter evidence of virginity. And yet this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloak before the elders of the city. The elders of the city shall take that man and whip him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought a bad name upon a virgin of Israel. And she shall be his wife. He may not divorce her all his days. But if the thing is true, that evidence of virginity was not found in the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house. And the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done an outrageous thing in Israel by whoring in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. It's talking about purging the evil of promiscuity. Okay? And basically, again, this was a punishment on the man. It was punishing the man for violating a virgin. Okay? That's the point. You have to read the whole passage in context. And if you're not reading everything in the context, okay? Because, here's the other one. But if in the open country a man meets a young woman who is betrothed, and a man sees her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no offense punishable by death. For in this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor, because he met her in the open country. Though the betrothed young woman cried out for help, there was no one to rescue her. So in that case, okay, if that happened, then can the woman be betrothed? Yes. Can she marry? Yes. But that's a very specific case. Okay? And it's also very specific when it says, and a man meets her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city. You shall stone them to death with stones. The young woman because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. What is the punishment should they be found because she cried out? Oh, that's right, 28 and 29. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all his days. Oh, so if she cries out and they're found, the man who's raping her has to marry her. Okay? If she doesn't cry out, that means she's committing a sin, and she and the man get taken to the city gate and stoned. Do you get it yet? This is the point. Okay? It's all laid out there exactly what is supposed to happen. Okay? Because you're trying to take 20th and 21st century thinking and apply it to a time when everything was radically different. And it doesn't work. Okay? Because how is the village supposed to take care of the woman? By punishing the man. and forcing the man to take care of the woman all the rest of his days. That's the point.
Of the problem right there. I just came up with a better solution than God could.
No, you didn't.
A more moral solution.
No, you didn't.
An all-powerful deity couldn't come up with a better solution than a woman must marry the man who assaults her?
Because again, it's not a punishment on the woman. It's a punishment on the man. And if you can't see that, then I'm sorry. Your IQ is lower than that of a brick. I'm sorry. Just the way it is. Okay? Because it's right there in black and white. And if you can't see that, then I feel sorry for you. Because you're attempting to apply 21st century promiscuity to something that has no promiscuity outside of prostitutes and whores. That the Bible clearly commands don't do. Right there in frickin' black and white. I don't understand what the hell you're talking about. Because again, this isn't a punishment on the woman, it's a punishment on the man. Because the man just doesn't get to, oh, I just get to go get married to this woman and then, quietly later just kind of divorce her and send her away. He doesn't get to do that.
That doesn't add up for me. It doesn't sit right with my sensibilities. And so when I got...
Well, that's because your sensibilities are that of the world, not of God. Clearly. Because you didn't come up with a better solution. You just came up with a, let the woman have as much sex as she want, let men go around and grape as many women as they want, and they just get to get married no matter what. That is idiotic. That is what we do today, and it doesn't work. Because all of that emotional baggage inevitably comes with that. That is stupid. The way that the society protected the woman in that respect was that they constantly reminded the man of his sin against the woman. When the man would start to complain, they'd be like, you don't get to complain because you raped her. And now you're stuck with her for the rest of your natural life, son. That's on you, not on her. And he has to hang his head in shame because he's the one that did it. And she gets to get taken care of by that man, and by extension by the community, because they would rally around her. That's how they did that back then. But again, you don't know that, Christy, because you don't do any research on what actually the things were back then. Okay, what the society was and everything. And it's all right there in black and white. You can read it for yourself, but you won't because you don't know what the Bible actually says.
That answer from him, it was not satisfactory. The justification, the apologetic response for this verse is just not satisfactory for me to find good moral value.
Well, that's because the moral value that you're looking for is not God's moral value. It's your own. You're basically standing there saying, well, I don't think it should be that way. Meh. Well, it doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter what you want. It matters what's in the print. And if what I'm saying and what your pastor's saying is the exact same thing, we're not the indoctrinated ones. She is. Because she's believing a lie. That's indoctrination. Okay? When you believe a lie. The lie that she believed was that everything in the Bible is sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. And oh my, there's a passage in here that says something that I don't agree with my worldly sensibilities. How dare it? Oh, I can't believe in this God anymore because he doesn't understand my worldly sensibilities. No, he's above your worldly sensibilities. Because he's punishing the man, not the woman. And if you can't see that, I'm sorry, you are out there. And you don't have a leg to stand on, Christy. You honestly don't. You don't have a single leg to stand on because that's not what the Bible actually says. The Bible doesn't say, hey, men of Israel, go grape as many people as you want, then take them as your wife. That's not what this command says. It says, don't do this. Otherwise, this is your punishment. And if you can't read that, then you're not reading the Bible. Again, exegesis versus eisegesis. Exegesis is allowing the text to speak for itself, which is what me and the pastor are doing. We're saying, yes, at the time, virginity was highly prized. Okay? Remaining pure was highly prized. And yes, if a man raped a woman, he was held accountable for it. Him alone. He had to pay his new wife's father a boatload of money, and then he had to marry that daughter and had to stay married to her for the rest of his life. He couldn't get a divorce. Because it doesn't say in here, oh, if at some point down the road, if he doesn't like it, then he can just get... No! He has to stay married to her forever. And if you can't understand that, Christy, then I feel sorry for you. Because you're not seeing what the Bible's actually saying. What you're doing is you're cherry-picking verses and you're reading into it your own worldly sensibilities and then claiming that, oh, this just violates my sensibilities. So what? Doesn't say it's right. Doesn't say, it says it's a sin. But what's the punishment for said sin? The man has to stay married to that woman forever. And the punishment is baked into that. The command is implicit that everyone in that town rallies around that woman to make sure that the man treats her right all the rest of his days. Until that man dies. That he takes care of that woman. Treats her like an actual wife. And that's probably why they didn't have much of a problem with that. Up until 2 Samuel when Amnon raped Tamar. Okay? And what's the punishment that should have happened? Amnon should have been married to Tamar. But instead, Absalom did exactly what you said, Christy, and took Tamar back into his own house and tried to care for her. But he saw how much the shame was, and so he burned with hatred for Amnon and went and killed Amnon. And then that put a rift between him and his father, David, because he killed his own half-brother. Are you stupid? If Absalom had taken Tamar directly to David and said, this happened, what are we going to do? The law says that he should have to marry her and he should have to take care of her the rest of his days. What would have happened? The circumstances would have been very different. But they didn't do that. They didn't follow the law of God. And so what ended up happening? David lost 2 sons. and had a daughter he couldn't marry off because of that. Because Absalom kills Amnon, and then Absalom runs off, and then when David, brings him back in, he's like trying to find out why Absalom did what he did, and Absalom wouldn't tell him, so David stopped talking to him for like 4 years, so Absalom felt shunned. And so what does he do? He goes out and stirs up Israel against David, and ends up getting killed in the subsequent battles. And now David's like, now I've lost both of my sons. What the hell? All could have been put right had Absalom just come and exposed Amnon for what he did. But he didn't do that. And we see the effects of that sin. It's a ripple effect. And we even see that today. And if she can't see it, she has no right to try to lecture Christians on what it means to believe in the Word of God. Because she doesn't have a clue to what the Word of God actually says. Because she is just cherry-picking verses and eisegeting into the text. And that is wrong. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think of this series so far. I needed to pound this point home, because this is something that people need to start doing, okay? Especially if you're thinking of deconstructing your faith. Now, look, I'm not saying that you can't ask the hard questions. I said this at the outset of this series, okay? It's okay to question your faith. It's okay to have doubts. It's okay to read certain passages and go, I don't understand this. But don't, for the love of God, do what she's doing. Do not do that. Do not cherry pick verses and eisegete your own worldview into the text. That is absolutely, unequivocally wrong. It's the reason why we have the prosperity gospel movement. It's the reason why we have the postmodern hippie Jesus BS. Because of people like her that only pick the good parts and then throw out the bad parts and then say, oh, well, that just made me question my faith. How did it make you question your faith when it's a punishment on the man who did the act in the first place? It's not stoning the man. It's forcing the man to take care of that woman for the rest of his natural life. That's a punishment, again, on the man. Now, you can argue, if you want, down in the comment section, the morality of it. Is it moral for a rapist to, do this blah, blah, blah? But you cannot take 20th and 21st century sensibilities and try to apply it to something that has a completely different meaning. It doesn't work. It's the same thing with the passages on slavery in the Bible. It's the same thing with other parts of the Bible that people take umbrage with, okay? That they try to point to and go, see, the Bible condones this. No, it doesn't. Because, in accordance with the slavery stuff, okay, that slavery was completely different because it was bondservantship. You were basically selling your services to someone to pay off a debt. And after 7 years, you got to go free because that was the year of Jubilee. And it commands those people to treat slaves as if they were members of their own household. But the problem is that we learn, and rightly so, about the Barbary slave trade, okay? And so when we hear the word slavery, we think Barbary slave trade, the buying and selling of human beings as cattle, as workhorses, okay? Being whipped, being worked in the cotton fields and tobacco fields, and being mercilessly whipped by people and beating them to within an inch of their life and all this kind of stuff. That's not what the Bible did. The Bible basically made it clear that if a person sold themselves to you and refused to work to pay off their debt, refused to do things, then you could correct them up to and using some sort of physical punishment to get them to pay off their debt. But if you killed that person, their blood was on your hands. That was not the case in the slave trade back in the 15, 16, 1700s and 1800s here in America. That was not. The people could do whatever they wanted to with their slaves and get away with it. And that was completely wrong. Trust me, I'm not condoning it, okay? But the problem is that people take that kind of, so that's what they associate the word slavery with. And so when they see the word slavery in the Bible, they immediately go to Barbary slave trade, people being bought and sold as cattle. Oh, this is so bad, this is so evil. Ah. And they don't read the passages. They just go, see, the Bible condones slavery. It says, masters can own slaves and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yes and no, because it's not the same exact thing. And you're trying to conflate two different terms because you're pushing two different things. And that's wrong. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Keep a civil tone, or I will bring down the ban hammer. Okay? This is a hot button issue. Okay? This is not... this is the reason why I've devoted now about 1.5 videos to this, is because it is important to pound home this point, that this was not about punishing the woman. This was about punishing the man who did that to the woman. Okay? And the implicit command there is that the people of the village come around the man and the woman to make sure that the man treats the woman as his wife. Okay? That's the implicit command there, because they basically say that that man has to stay married to that woman for the rest of his days. Not her days, his days. So he couldn't just quietly take her out in the countryside, murder her, bury her, and then say, "Oh, wild animals got my wife. Oh, darn! Now I'm free. I can go marry someone else now." He doesn't get to do that. Okay? Which is kind of what she was thinking. Like, oh, he just gets to go and just, a man just gets to go and just grape a bunch of women and get wives and then divorce them or get rid of them. No. You miss that last line there where it says, and he can, he has to take care of her all his days. That's a forever commandment. That is basically, you are in that, locked in that forever until the man dies. Not the woman, the man. Okay? So it's a punishment on the man. So again, keep it civil. Okay? Throw some discourse down below. I will answer any questions people have about this to the best of my knowledge. But and again, this is a hot button issue, okay? I don't want people to be like, "Oh, you're just condoning." No. Because again, this is a punishment on the man for committing the sin, not on the woman. Okay? The woman is the innocent party in all this, and she doesn't have any rights under Israelite law. Okay? Women didn't have any rights under Israelite law back then. Okay? Even in Jesus' day, women didn't have a whole lot of rights, okay, for doing certain things. It's why the Samaritan woman had 5 husbands, okay? And the man that she was living with at that point was not her husband, is because she didn't have any rights, and if she wasn't being taken care of by a man, she wasn't able to do anything. Okay? So that's kind of the point of this. Okay? Is it's a protection for the woman. And as we say, we will see you on the next one.